Sonic Universe Issue 50. Alright, I hope this is good. It starts out in Robotropolis, and just like in the show, we have Sonic's mother narrating. She says all things must come to an end. And as I expected, Robotnik's egg-shaped base looks perfectly intact instead of destroyed or severely damaged from when the heroes piloted planes into it and caused a gigantic explosion on it. I guess we'll never learn how Robotnik survives that. I always expected there wouldn't be an answer to that question, because that'd be too good to be true. And instead, I guess I'm supposed to assume that Robotnik was in a room where he wouldn't get killed or injured when that was happening, and the base was repaired after the planes flew into it. I'd like at least a reference to the fact that this happened to the base last time we saw it. Oh well, I expected that. It's not a very popular show, so it's a miracle this issue's even out. Dingo says that he thinks Robotnik likes having him and Sleet around. Sleet calls him an idiot for it, naturally. Robotnik doesn't like anybody. I like that the text boxes are color-coded so I know who's talking. Dingo asks why they're leaving now, and what makes today any different than yesterday. Sleet says, what use does he have for us when he has them? Okay, so he's just assuming Eggman won't want to hunt down and kill them for abandoning him. Considering that Sleet discovered how fun blowing up SWATbots was in the show, it is inevitable that he would eventually get sick of Eggman and leave him. He gets forced to work for him anyways. Something shoots something, an explosion happens, and a ship crashes in flames. And a somehow surviving Sleet looks dazed and says he refuses to be his obedient mutt again. It's surprising that Sleet would decide to leave Eggman without stealing a Chaos Emeralds from him. But the only reason I'm thinking that this would never happen in the show is that of course the show is mostly just episodic, with no continuity. It is plausible that this would happen in the final episode. So Eggman says he wants the traitors roboticized. This was the moment when everything came to a head. And finally, now, Sonic's mother decided that her children needed her. As we see Sonic and his siblings hanging from a wall in chains. I hope we'll learn how they got to this point. I was never a fan of non-chronological storytelling. It doesn't feel like Eggman earned his victory over them, because I don't know how he succeeded. Apparently, the reason Sleet said, what use does he have for us when he has them, he was talking about these guys. So, it makes even more sense that he left Eggman all of a sudden, because they can't do their job anymore. Still, he should have known that Eggman would have found a different use for Sleet and Dingo. There's predictable dialogue where Robotnik taunts the heroes, and the heroes have faith in their mother to save them. Naturally, since she saved them so many other times. Why was an entire page wasted on this? There wasn't any plot progression. You know what would have been better? If this page was spent on showing us how he captured them instead. Eggman smartly tells his robot that he wants the store under lock until he gets back. And he says adieu, meaning goodbye forever. If he's planning to roboticize them, he's planning on seeing them again, even if roboticized. Unless he plans on sending them away, so we'll never see them again afterwards, but I doubt it. So no, it's not goodbye forever. But like in SC1, it makes sense that someone not French would get adieu wrong. Then Manic actually doubts that his mother will come to save them, despite all the times she came to save them in the past. He says that he can't even remember her face, despite seeing it in, like, the 3rd episode. But it's been a while since then. He barely ever sees her face. He asks, haven't we needed her before? The only times they've actually needed her help is when she came to save them. There's a purple light in the room, and Elena shows up and says satisfyingly, I too wish I could have been with you sooner. This is nice and all, but I still want to know how Robotnik captured the heroes. What took him so long? I feel like if this was the show, we'd be shown how they got captured. This just feels like the climax of the episode, or right before the climax, not the beginning. I'm thinking he used the footprint tracking technology that he used to capture Sonic and Manic at one point. Makes him look pretty stupid for not using that in the episodes after Sonia's choice though. She points her staff at them, and a light comes out of it, and suddenly they're free from the chains. She says the Royal Scepter has many powers, including teleportation, but only for the holder. That explains everything. So it's not like she herself has those powers, which would have been cool of her. But it also makes me wonder why her children didn't get those powers. From genetics. So that explains her mysterious abilities without being confusing anymore. She says the time has come to finally defeat Robotnik. I guess she stared into a crystal ball, or listened in on people with, like, bugs put in it in Robotnik's base. Or more likely, the prophecy told her, hey, on this specific date, the heroes are going to be captured and put in this specific place. So you need to go there when that happens. Because we don't know why she knows to come here. So, did you have to wait until seeing Dingo would have left Robotnik, because then it'd be at a huge disadvantage? I guess so. He's without bounty hunters, but he's got the heroes captured. Well, he'd need them to try to recapture them after they'd escape from here. Too bad she didn't think to just use the Royal Scepter to teleport seeing Dingo away and have Robotnik just as disadvantaged so we could get to the finale much faster. I guess she was morally opposed to telefragging them with the ground after warping them underground, because that'd be killing. So she didn't do that. And there's a teleport range limit, so she couldn't send them to the sun. She asked for their medallions. Then she says that she can't go into detail because she smartly assumes out of nowhere that Robotnik is surely listening in on their conversation. He just left. But he could still have the room bugged. A robot could be listening, and he could probably phone him. Sonic asks, prepared for what? Impatient to learn the plan when she just said she couldn't tell them the plan yet. I love that Manic says, Ma, you will be back, right? It kinda calls her out on not spending enough time with them and having to abandon them. It's cathartic that, realistically, at least one of them would have trust issues with her, and of course it would be Manic, the one with the most harsh upbringing as a thief in the streets. It's sweet that she puts her hands on his back and face and they smile as she calls him Dear Manic, and says that nothing will keep them apart ever again. She says she loves them and warps away as to look sad. I don't know, she spent so much time away from them with them being sad that she won't spend time with them. I think I need to see her do a whole bunch of mother-children activities with them for me to really forgive her. I still see her as the mother who doesn't spend enough time with them. Sonic says he has getting out of this room covered. I guess she teleported their chains away with stuff, so that's why they vanished. It's confusing because the light didn't reach their chains. Sonya makes the plan. I love that, because she's the girl, so she's basically the Sally of the team, complete with her wanting them to be careful and focus. So she should be the leader. She tells Manic to mess with Robotnik's security so they can get out of the building. She should be whispering the plan though, since her mother clearly thought the room was bugged. Although I'm sure Robotnik's bug or robot could reasonably be advanced enough to hear her anyways. She wants to try to locate anything that might help their mother's plan. Basically navigating blind. Sonic's gonna be the decoy and cause chaos. Of course, with his super speed. So Sonic spin dashes through robots, and Manic gets to a keyboard. But it seems like his arms have been grabbed from behind. I have to assume the person who snuck up on them was really quiet, and in a way that would make sense. Otherwise I'd wonder why I didn't hear him coming. But there's room for the imagination here because we just saw one panel of him. So I guess he tiptoed over to him. Meanwhile, in Moba Doom, Elena Wart's there and is asked what she's doing here. She needs to use the Power Stone to charge her children's medallions. It's a Chekhov's gun. For some reason, someone has a problem with this, because apparently, that'll cause a power surge. Elena says, not when I do it. I hope it'll make sense that she didn't just do this a long time ago. Because as it stands, she could have warped to her kids and gotten the medallions and did this in the first episode. Sonya says this place is so big that she can't find Robotnik anywhere. I really love that the writer remembered the pendant she got in the Emerald Peninsula. If you didn't watch the show, you wouldn't know about that. She says she can only use it safely one more time. She's convinced that because today's the big day, it's now or never. She shouldn't have needed to be told that. So she used it. Though I still wonder if she's using it too early. She sees Manic being held still by a big guy in front of Robotnik. The monitor says what room it is. Sonya gives Sonic the directions. So after something depressing happens, and they're faced with bad-looking Robians, someone sneaks up behind Sonic and hits him in the head. And Sonic miraculously recognizes him as Sleet. I guess because of his outfit, because his head doesn't look nearly enough like Sleet's. There's never really any excuse for not having the Robians look just like they normally would, but made of metal. Or at least looking like cyborgs, because I guess Eggman wants to save money on metal. The heroes seem to need rescuing, surrounded by Robians. Never mind the fact that Sonic has a spin dash and can run past and barrel into anything. So you'd think you just pick her up and run away anyways. Alina shows up to save them and says it's too dangerous to use medallions without manicure, even though they'd be less powerful, so there'd be less of a power surge. She says she'll take care of this, as there's a cool badass close-up of her face. And she sings into a microphone she just has now, which I guess got summoned with magic. She sings, and all of the Robians look stunned, like they just woke up. Though it'd be made more clear if some of them asked, "Where are we?" And I'm still contending with Chuck's horrible design here. They couldn't have just had him have the same coloration as he's supposed to, at least. They couldn't have just had him have both of the eyes look normal, and everyone has steam coming off them. Good thing they can take it, being robots and all. Sleet's still evil though, and takes Sonia's pendant. He wants the hedgehogs out of the way, and plans on defeating Robotnik. An evil goal and a noble goal. Sonia warns him that using the pendant again will be too dangerous. Of course he doesn't listen to her. To be fair, would you? For all he knows, she's lying to get him to not use it. I guess she assumes that if he uses it, then she'll get hurt as well as him. He gets scared and sucked into a portal or something. And then we cut to Robotnik monologuing to Manic that he'll get roboticized, instead of immediately doing so and monologuing to him afterwards. I guess because he'd find it anticlimactic and boring if he just immediately roboticized them. He could at least make the bragging really quick, like, "Ha! I got you!" But instead he's an idiot. But at least it's completely in character for Robotnik. But I was still bothered the whole time by how lucky Manic was to not be roboticized if he was captured so long ago. Robotnik says that soon Manic will join his father as a servant. But I don't recognize the cyborg near him at all. I know that there's a statue of King Max in the first episode of Sonic Underground, so that's what I would expect him to look like. If Robotnik meant Manic's adoptive father, that's confusing. I love that Manic calls Robotnik out, even if in a cruel way, but he's a cynical thief. He says, "You're just mad because unlike me, you don't have a dad, or a family, or friends, or anyone." I don't think Robotnik would care. He does, apparently, since he has him thrown in the roboticizer looking angry. I guess he's just mad at his insolence. And Manic somehow is able to remain cheerful and say, "I don't do Mondays." I feel like the show would portray him as scared here. Wasn't he scared the last time he was in a roboticizer? It goes without saying, but the art is fantastic. I'm looking at characters like Sonia and Manic, and I'm actually hearing their voices from the show in my head. Anyways, we see Knuckles punch away a metal part of the wall. Here to save the day because Alina warped to him and told him to go here after she met him on Angel Island. I forgot that they knew each other for a bit because that was so confusing and we never saw them meet. I wish that we had seen one panel of Alina warping to Knuckles first and saying that she was gonna gather a whole bunch of people instead just a surprise. At least in Sad AM we saw Sally make a plan with the Wolf Pack in the final episode first. It's not like in Sad AM the Wolf Pack and various other freedom fighters Sally met randomly showed up and tried to attack Robotnik in the final attack on his base. Instead, we actually saw Sally talk to them first and send them on the mission, so it felt more epic than this. I love that Knuckles' dinosaur was brought back. They really cared. The last time he showed up in the show, the dinosaur was nowhere to be found. Cyrus looks a bit too short and chibi and harmless though. You think the guy who is basically the heroes' engineer, the heroes' rotor, you think he'd have a ray gun with him to demonstrate that he's useful because of his technology. Said he doesn't have anything in his hands, so I'm not sure how he'd be useful. We see that pilot guy Trevor too. A whole bunch of Sonic's allies from earlier episodes in the show overwhelm Robotnik in his room, which is exactly what I'd imagine the finale to be like. Naturally, Alina got them all together because of her teleportation power. I'm not sure why she had to wait so long to do this though. Sleet and Dingo have been complete non-entities in the story, but that was probably why she waited so long. but I can't imagine they would have been useful anyways against so many different heroes overwhelming Robotnik. Well, Robotnik could still have Sleet's shapeshifting ray and use it himself, so he wouldn't need Sleet. Manic says thanks for the save, and Robotnik presses a button and calls the swap bots, calling all of them to the control room immediately. He could have easily been prevented from saying all of this if the people surrounding him had the common sense to punch him and just keep punching him, like what actually happened. But fine, it makes sense to write them to have to fight a bunch of robots for the climax, even if the robots had to easily kill in one hit. It's satisfying to see Robotnik scared, but all Mindy does is just stand there. We'll never know why she was in any way helpful when she was freedom fighting. And I guess the reason Robotnik isn't using Sleet's shapeshifting ray is because technically that would de-roboticize Dingo. Because then Dingo wouldn't be a Robian anymore. But couldn't there be a Robian setting on it? So yeah, if you were using Dingo, you'd think that you'd have him be shapeshifted and try to fight one of them. And then he would suck at the fight, I guess. Instead, Dingo's been doing nothing. And Robotnik waited until now to tell Dingo to get in there and do something. Which just makes me wonder why he didn't do something. I guess Elena's song really did free the will of every single Robian in the city. So Dingo's acting like he would normally, and just hiding it by not talking? Robotnik, who's in this predicament because he was too stupid to learn from Sleet and use the shapeshifting ray on Dingo to make him fight, and instead expecting him to just fight as he was. The idiotic Robotnik says that as a mutant, he can't even be roboticized right. A mutant? Huh? How would he not be roboticized right? I never imagined Dingo to not fight for him when roboticized. He plans on telling Dingo to self-destruct. And then it's satisfying when Dingo grabs him and says, "Shut it." So he does have free will again. I was right after all. And he was just in a tranquil fury earlier. He throws Robotnik into the roboticizer, slamming his back against the wall. Robotnik has 2 cyborg arms. And Sonic Underground established that trying to roboticize metal causes an explosion. I guess from a chemical reaction. Eggman screams no, and is surrounded by blue light. It's shockingly dark, but it makes perfect sense that someone who's normally considered a villain would be the one to do this and take down Robotnik for real. He was needed, because none of the heroes would have the guts to do this. They just have him imprisoned, and he'd escape. It is stealing Sonic's victory from him though, but Sonic couldn't be portrayed as killing Robotnik, so it can't be helped. It's odd that Robotnik was covered in light, and there wasn't an outright explosion like there's supposed to be. Is this foreshadowing that something else is gonna happen to him? Like we'll have a dangerous robotic final form to fight with? After all, being a Robian means you can't do anything but what Robotnik would want you to do. When Robotnik roboticized himself, he kept his free will just fine. But I guess Robotnik had to specifically program the roboticizer to keep its free will. So no wonder the victory had to take so long. Not only did Sonya have to have her pendant, but they had to wait for Robotnik to roboticize Dingo first, so he could catch Robotnik off guard in his room and kill him. And I guess he wouldn't have spent enough time with him to be fed up with him enough to kill him, if Robotnik had roboticized him the first time he threatened to, like would be realistic. Because he thought Robotnik liked having him around at the start of this issue, as if he wanted him to like him. Then he saw the sheer magnitude of how hated Robotnik really is, and realized he could beat him. Knuckles asks what about the floating island, as he's holding 2 emeralds. And he says it's worth the island being grounded for what's about to happen. Why does she care whether the island's grounded or not? It's not like it being grounded for too long would destroy the world. Alina tells Manic to come here, and explains that since Robotnik's coup, she's scoured Mobius to find the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Why didn't I see that coming? Probably because it's the easiest possible explanation to come up with for what she was doing. Finding the emeralds is a video game thing, and Sonic Underground isn't anything like the games. If she told her kids she was doing this, Robotnik's side might find out and try to look for the emeralds too. That's why she didn't tell them why she stayed separate from them. And she didn't want to be captured with them, so she wouldn't be able to rescue them. That's why she was avoiding them. I figured she was just doing random freedom fighting missions to sabotage Eggman on a whim. But she could have been doing that on the way. So now it makes sense that the heroes had to travel all over Mobius trying to find their mother. it's not like she was going to the ends of the earth to avoid her children. She was doing it to find the emeralds. And since they're all just 7 emeralds on a huge planet, it makes sense that she took so long to find them. I have to assume that this planet doesn't have Chaos Emerald radars. If it did, Robotnik would have discovered the floating island a long time ago. But instead he seemed to find out about the existence of emeralds for the first time in that episode. I guess Robotnik never knew they existed until it was too late. Or else Him and the heroes would have known about them. I didn't know there were 7 emeralds in the underground universe too, because we never saw all 7 before. It was more unique for there to not be 7. But it makes sense to reveal that there were more because there's 7, like in the games. And it's still not exactly like the games in being true to Sonic Underground, because all of the emeralds are green, like an emerald is supposed to look. Like in Archie, the emeralds are said to be able to work miracles. A pretty broad, vague statement about their power capability. It's the same kind of thing that was used to justify the emeralds bring Sonic back to life in 06. So it makes sense that they'd be able to do what they're supposed to do here too. The heroes are given the emeralds. All of them go super even. I was surprised because they didn't have anything to fight. But that's even more creative. I was surprised to see that they didn't all turn golden. It's more creative to have their super forms look like this instead. Giving them all super forms is a good way to make the finale have more of an impression on you. Why does Sonya have 2 different hair colors? I guess they inverted the colors on them. I mean, she usually has 2 hair colors because she's red and pink, but my point is red and pink are a lot closer in color than this. They look confident as they pull their instruments out. I still wish Sonya looked the way she'd normally look though. They play music, and a swap bot explodes. I never thought there'd be a song in this issue because it's a comic book, and nobody liked the songs. But it makes sense that they thought it wouldn't be Sonic Underground without a song in it. The song brings back the free will of every Robian on Earth. It doesn't de-roboticize them though. At least they get to keep the benefits being Robians. Like having tougher skin that's harder to damage. And the medallions never de-roboticize anyone. So it makes sense that even at their most powerful, the heroes still couldn't magic Deus Ex Machina away robotization. Good, because that's not what I would imagine would happen. There's still being a lot of work to do, feels like a realistic, inevitable thing they'd have to deal with after Robotnik's defeat. I even talked about that earlier. Taking down Robotnik's just the first step, they still have to deal with robotization. But Chuck not looking terrible anymore was one of the things everyone looked forward to from the first episode. So it'd be a shame if we never got to see him return to normal. The heroes hug their mother, with the Oracle showing up at the very end after everything was said and done. He didn't bother doing anything to help them this issue. Oh, good. We see Chuck in a group hug with Sonic and Sonic's adoptive mother. We see that everyone who got roboticized got returned to normal. This was all after the Council of 4 was formed. Who knows what the heroes did to get de-robotization technology going. It just completely skipped past all of that. It completely skipped past any kind of process. I guess Cyrus helped a lot. He never did in the show. At least in Sadiam we saw the heroes trying and failing to get de-robotization to work. But yeah, I'm glad Chuck's back to normal. Too bad we'll never get a line from him because it's all narration by the stupid Oracle as if we're supposed to like him. But it makes sense to bookend it by having narration at the ending too. The aristocracy was restructured, with those that had been loyal to Robotnik stripped of their noble bearing, though they were promised that with hard work ethic, they could still be accepted into society. How the hell are the heroes supposed to know which parts of the aristocracy were actually loyal to Robotnik? I can imagine most of them would have hated him, and only been loyal reluctantly to avoid being roboticized. Shockingly, we see Dingo happily frying hot dogs. As the text box says that Robotnik and his minions are making up for past mistakes. Wait, even Robotnik? That's supposed to be Robotnik? Wait, Robotnik was actually roboticized instead of completely blown up? His arms were made of metal, remember? Not even his metal arms were blown up? We should have seen that if they were. It's good that Robotnik's been reprogrammed to be a nice helper robot. It's a bit shady of the heroes to be fine with reprogramming him. But it's shockingly loving and merciful of them to have Robotnik still around, instead of in a prison. I thought he was vaporized in the roboticizer. I love that the hot dogs that Dingo's selling are called Dingo dogs. Like he really made them his own. This issue actually gets me to like Dingo. It's ironic that Robotnik's serving chili dogs, Sonic's favorite food, and we don't see Sonic eating them. I can't help but smile at seeing this. But I'd rather see Sonic and Chuck palling around instead of one measly panel of him hugging Sonic. We never see him talk to Sonic again. So instead of us seeing a scene where they actually talk to each other for the first time in years, he's more like a cameo. It turns out Sleet was trapped in the pendant, in a pocket dimension. I guess they have to put food in there. How does he not starve to death? I've been giving it the benefit of the doubt and assuming that there's tons of food and water and breathable atmosphere in there. It's more like a green planet with nobody in it, I guess. I thought he was killed, or could never be talked to again. He stubbornly refuses to help Dingo sell some chili dogs, because all he wanted was to replace Robotnik. He thinks that all he deserves to be in life is someone important, not a chili dog salesman. The narration says that many more adventures will happen. I don't see how though. Their adventures are obviously over. They don't have any more villains to fight after this. Well, that was awesome. This issue is by Enigma. I really wish I knew how Robotnik managed to capture all 3 of the hedgehogs. That's the whole reason this story started, and we never find out the answer. I can only assume it makes sense. I mean, he managed to get Sonic and Manic captured in Sonia's choice, so he is competent enough to get it done. But come on, how did he get to that point? It feels like the story started out in the climax of the episode, and the actual episode would have showed us how Robotnik captured him. Did he give Sleet and Dingo the Sonic tonic again? I guess he tracked their footprints again. Well, as long as I ignore how much I hate that it starts to meet a res, it was still a good story. I was perfectly calm throughout it, just casually going through it instead of being constantly stopped by having to point out problems with it in ways it was disappointing. It had a coherent plot I could actually follow instead of every plot point being confusing. What happened was, it turns out that the reason it had to take so long for the finale to happen was that not only did Sonia need that pendant, but according to the prophecy Alina knew about, I guess, she had to wait until Sleet finally got fed up with working for Robotnik again, which was foreshadowed, because he loved blowing up SWATbots in the show, so him abandoning again was inevitable when it's such a bad boss. So Robotnik got Sleet and Dingo roboticized, and that's backfired on him big time. If he had Sleet in his shapeshifting array with them, he could have gotten Dingo to fight instead of just having SWATbots. It's finally explained that the Royal Scepter is why Alina can teleport. It's not like she was training under a wizard like the Oracle or anything. At least that's simpler and explains why the heroes don't have that power. So she teleports away the heroes' chains, and goes back to Mobadoon to power up their medallions with the Power Stone. It's always great to have continuity nods in the finale, and we have them in spades because thanks to Alina, all of the allies that the heroes got across the show overwhelm Robotnik in his face when he's about to roboticize Manic, and trash his SWATbots when he somehow gets a chance to summon them. Well, they gotta be written to do something other than intimidate him to doing nothing by standing there in the crowd. After the sheer surprise of them barging into the room made Eggman hesitate enough to not just roboticize him in a single motion. So that's all they did after all those episodes? One page of trashing SWATbots? After one panel of seeing how they got to this point? Well, I guess that was really all they could have done. They're just fighters, nothing else. And there's only so much comic space. So it would have wasted comic space to see them trying to get to this point. Better than Sadie M, where the heroes' allies were basically useless and just got captured. So meeting the wolf pack was a waste of time. And SWATbots can be kicked down by Sonya, so why not have them get kicked down by everyone else? So the heroes needed to have met all those allies to have overwhelmed Robotnik and intimidate him standing still for a while, and then getting Dingo fed up with him by insulting him for not helping out and trying to get him to destroy himself. Because he grabbed the idiot ball and didn't just use Sleet's shapeshifting ray on him. But even then, Dingo would have just been one person fighting along with the SWATbots. Dingo needed to have worked for him for a long time to have felt like betraying him and getting him roboticized. So these two things explain why the finale took so long to happen. So they basically did everything perfectly. While yes, Robotnik should have logically roboticized Sleet and Dingo much earlier, the first time he threatened to, the heroes still needed to go through all those episodes to accrue enough allies that they could all defeat the SWATbots and get Dingo to beat Robotnik when he thought he was on his side. But he wasn't, because Alina used the powered up medallions to bring the Robians back their free will with the power of her voice. Of course it was her voice, because the heroes were in a rock band, And she needs to contrast the heroes by not having an instrument, because she's already the adult of the group. Even the pendant was brought back, even if instead of defeating Robotnik in any way, it just trapped Sleet in it. But also made sure the heroes knew that Manic was kidnapped and where he was, which is why they tried to go find him, and why Lena knew where to go find them to save them. I guess she knew where they were because of the prophecy. So if it weren't for the pendant, Manic probably would have been roboticized. Dingo finally turning on Robotnik and doing something Sonic wouldn't have the guts to do is much more satisfying than a pendant Sonya just found magically defeating Robotnik. Instead it was used creatively, which is more tolerable for something that she's very lucky she even managed to get. I was surprised that we actually got to see what would happen if someone used it when it wasn't safe to. We finally got to see Sonic's uncle brought back to normal. It's still not quite good enough though because he doesn't have any dialogue. We don't see a scene where he was like, Sonic? And then they'd hug. It's just happening as the stupid oracle's narrating over it, as if we want to hear him talk again. You'd feel like we were getting the full impact of the adoptive parents being returned to normal if they actually got to talk. Instead, their interaction with the heroes is entirely constrained to one panel with no dialogue to get you invested in it. And then they stop being characters forever. I love that even Dingo got a happy ending. He's serving chili dogs to people and happy about it. I'm not so sure about Robotnik doing that though. At least he's making up for things. But I'm pretty sure he was supposed to explode in the roboticizer. Maybe his metal arms did explode, but the organic parts of him didn't, naturally. His arms do look different from how they normally do here. It was a creative twist that instead of being sent to another dimension like Sad AM, or killed like an Archie, he got to make up for his mistakes, even if by being reprogrammed to do so. He got the perfect ironic punishment, being turned into a robot himself and losing his free will. It's surprising that the heroes didn't get too self-righteous and refuse to do that to him. I would expect him to still be alive. I guess his organic parts were roboticized just fine, but still damaged by the metal arms exploding on him. And then he got repaired. We never did see how a cyborg being roboticized would turn out in Sonic Underground. Just the robot. So it can work. I just expect the explosion of the metal parts to be so huge and hot that even the roboticized organic parts would be destroyed, along with the entire roboticizer. But it can make sense that the explosion wouldn't be that big if only a small part of him was made of metal to begin with. But that's just one panel being not how I'd expect. If the whole idea was to have Dingo make up for his mistakes, the first thing I would think of is they be in a charity, like at a soup kitchen or something. Not serving chili dogs, which any random guy could do. It's kind of weird that they just have a normal guy job to make up for the mistakes, when it's a job that they could get replaced in anyways. I'd expect them to be charity workers, but it makes sense because Sonic really loves chili dogs. The entire issue was great. For the most part, it was exactly what I wanted in a finale, and there were even some creative surprises in it. I should have known Alina was collecting the Chaos Emeralds. I just figured there were only a few because we only ever saw a few. I guess she warped to Angel Island and had any emeralds she found hidden there. That's why we never saw her holding any. So she had the heroes go super with them, and the power of the medallions combined with the emeralds ended up bringing back the mind of every Robian permanently. The medallions can return free will temporarily on their own, so this was foreshadowed. And they were even powered up by the Power Stone as well as the super forms, putting in the extra effort to have it make sense, just in case someone would wonder why the emeralds alone would let them do this, since the emeralds aren't known for having powers like this. And it seems like the writer even liked Sonic Underground, averting what I was worried about the whole time. Considering that Sonic Universe issue 51 came out before this, I was worried we'd either never get this issue out at all, or it'd be put off until Antoine and Bunny got back. Because it's Sonic Underground. We're lucky this issue even exists. There's obviously more fan demand for Antoine and Bunny to get back. I was fine with the story. As usual, Archie Sonic Line is fantastic and surprises me with how not bad it usually is. All of these pages, and my only huge gripes with the issue were like 2 pages. I hate that we don't know how Robotnik captured the heroes. That was rushed and underwhelming. I hate that Chuck never got to say anything after being returned to normal after all of that waiting. And as I expected, it never explained why Robotnik survived some planes being sent to crash into his base at the end of the previous episode, and just pushed the reset button. So I hated that I ignored that. But I can always assume that Eggman escaped to safety in an escape pod, and the base got reconstructed before the finale. Maybe the base was made of carbon nanotubes. And Manic was just a kidnapping victim until the end. but he did tons of stuff in the show itself, so that's not too bad. At least it wasn't Sonya who got kidnapped. At least it made sense that it happened to him, and Alina got to hug the heroes a bunch of times. So she was trying to make up for things. She said that she wished she could have reunited with them a lot sooner, and Manic didn't even trust her at first, so it kinda called her out on being absent so much.